Okay, so I am on day who knows what of this cross country drive. I stopped for a few nights in Knoxville because I have family there. I'm feeling refreshed and raring to just get to where I need to go. I'm moving to New Haven, Connecticut from California, driving cross country, in case you missed that video. That's why all this shit is in my car. That's why my dog is snoring next to me in the front seat. Because I'm going to be joining a new master's program, new for me anyway, at Yale's Divinity School. So I'm doing a master's of art and religion with a concentration in religion and the arts. So has more of a creative focus and is more creative perhaps materially in terms of what I'll be producing and how I'll be going about my studies and my research there. But so the reason why I'm going to Divinity School is multifold. On the one hand, I have always been kind of desperately seeking some clarity or relationship with the divine, or just something that exists that's larger than myself. And I never had a good conception of what that was. When I was growing up, all of my friends would either go to religion, like religious school on Sundays, like Bible study, or CCD if they're Catholic, or synagogue on the weekends if they're Jewish. And I was always really jealous because, one, it seemed like just such an easy way to gather in community with people and to have something in common with everyone. And I felt really, even as a young kid, felt really different from everybody else. And so I was really jealous that they were all like doing these things on Sunday that I didn't understand, because I wasn't raised in any type of faith tradition other than like capitalist Christmas stuff and Easter eggs. Like that was pretty much the extent of that. Anyway, so I was always really jealous, and I always wanted to go just to see what was going on. What are you learning there? Like, it felt like such a secret that I wasn't really privy to. So I think I've always just held on to that a little bit, that kind of desire to understand what's going on in those spaces and to belong there. So there's that part. I'm living most of my life right now trying to satisfy or honor some of the desires I had when I was a child or an adolescent, teenager, even early 20s. Things that I've always wanted to do that I ignored or didn't honor for whatever reason. Just trying to make younger me happy. And turns out that doing that makes the me of now very happy. Because in leaning into that desire and trying to figure out what faith is to me and how that differs from my conceptions of religion and religious bodies and religious orders and organizations and whatnot, I'm really interested in that kind of personal navigation of faith and how both me personally and kind of in a larger sociological sense, how people navigate and negotiate like really difficult concepts and ethics in their lives based on, certain texts that are translated 6 times over. That would be the more of like a hermeneutical interest, like how we're interpreting these texts now. And I'm not going for a master's in divinity. Not that I'm kind of closing off the idea of pastoral care. I'm interested in positioning myself, beyond this program, wherever is of the most use to my community, both in terms of geographical community, but also like communities I identify with or communities I don't identify with, but that need care and attention and aid in whatever way. And if pastoral care is something that I would be able to do after this, that would be of help to people, then that is something I'm absolutely open to. But right now, I'm really just doing this to satisfy my spiritual and academic curiosities. And then on the academic side, well, obviously I'm interested in how we engage with and interpret. Ooh, there's a mosquito in my car. Oh. All right, so obviously I'm interested in the role of religion today, just in that there's never really been any separation of church and state. So it's pretty relevant to the, systems that I live under here in the United States. So I'm generally curious about, how people, again, are negotiating with these texts to arrive at certain conclusions that are supporting certain political movements. So that's a whole other conversation. I'm looking forward to having a better understanding of the whys and hows of it all. Otherwise, academically, my interest does really lie in like the translation of texts like the 1st and 2nd century after the Christ event, when that early radical Jewish sect of his followers started writing things down, started identifying as Christians. What were those relationships like? Are there source texts that I can look to that can illuminate some alternative methods for kinship, both kinship with other humans, kinship with animals, planetary kinship? Is there something in this really generative, fruitful period of time? Is there something in there that I can reference? And just thinking about different ways of being together on this planet. What has been lost in translation? Stuff like that. So that's what I'm more or less interested in. At least that's what I'm going in interested in. I'm also leaving myself open to having that interest swayed. It's evolved a lot over the last few years. Originally, my academic interest started from translating old Babylonian myths into the Hebrew Bible, and then kind of tracking them through the Christian Bible. So that was my original research interest, and I took a lot of like ancient Anatolian language classes and Hebrew classes and things like that. And I kind of just arrived at this general sense of really wanting to figure out what are the stories that can be sustained for so many millennia, even through all of these different translations, both in terms of language and context and location and culture. So what is persisting through there in terms of like morals or lessons and ethics of how people are engaging with each other? What are the rules they're setting for themselves and how they treat each other and animals and the planet and whatnot? So the Ark, for instance, was one of the stories that I was tracking in my early research, which is a really obvious one, but it's fun to kind of read those source texts and just see how. Oh, wait. Let me pay attention for a second. Where am I going? Okay, finally on a different highway. I've been taking I-40 east since California, and now exiting Tennessee, I'm finally on 81. We made it, baby. We're on a different road. Well, that's very exciting for me. I've been driving on the same road for a week. Anywho, so with this flood myth, I'm not going to get into what the different varietals right here now, but it's something that I have a little bit of difficulty explaining my interest to people, especially Christian friends of mine, who are maybe a little resistant to the idea that the story of their books is not original, because it's not. But for me, it's that act of translation, the reality that this story and what the cultures around it have gained from it, what it means to them, transcends any faith practice. That for me is touching on a conception of the divine. That's the basket I'm putting my eggs in, is these transcendent themes that are going from ancient Babylonia all the way through ancient Judaism into early Christianity. It's these same stories that communities are telling themselves and each other that are resisting all of this other change. That to me just feels so important, and that's really crucial to my, I guess, again, understanding of the divine, or my conception of what that is and could be. But I do think that some people are a little, just resistant or upset that their story, Noah's Ark, for instance, is not the first instance of that story. I think it's just a different outlook on what divine inspiration is, perhaps. So I don't remember why I started talking about this. Oh, because that was my original research interest. As difficult as it is, or to kind of watch the alarm and skepticism grow on my friends' faces when I'm explaining these things. Again, these are friends who are particularly devout Christians. I also really want to figure out how to handle those conversations with more care and empathy, I think, because I'm so interested in kind of the historical aspect of it. I think sometimes that can come across as uncaring or unintentionally disrespectful to a certain faith tradition, and I don't ever want to do that or alienate people in that way. So I think also what I'm hoping to gain from Divinity School is a better handle or a better toolkit for leaning into difficult conversations or conversations with people with whom I do not agree on a lot of things. Friends of mine or people who are not in my community. I think that's something that I really need to learn, and I think that that's something that I can learn at Divinity School. So I'm looking forward to that a lot. I've been really trying to push myself the last 2 years, moving back to the States and being in my other grad program in California. I'm really trying to just push myself to do everything I can to advocate for myself and other people, but also to really challenge myself and like push myself to have difficult conversations. I made a lot of mistakes the last 2 years, embarrassed myself in myriad ways, which I will not be getting into now, if ever. But I think that was really important for my growth as an adult who has a certain ego, to just really embrace being bad at things and being wrong at things. Just trying to really set myself up to present myself with some kind of humility or humbleness in coming to this program as someone who is spiritually and aesthetically, ethically, consciously, politically a little alternative. I recognize that I'm going to probably be at odds with people with whom there aren't that many of us. And this isn't necessarily the most coherent or linear train of thought. It doesn't serve me or anybody else to only be in community with people you agree with, but I think it's really easy to do that, and I want to just really figure out how to be in community with people who have different conceptions about the world than I do. For instance, I'm driving past a billboard right now that is enormous, and it says, "Jesus, your only way to God. Call 83 for truth." And there's this song, who is it? I want to say it's Riley Green, the country music singer. He has a song, "Jesus Saves," that is a really compelling narrative of why billboards like that exist, which I'm sure somebody must have done a deep dive into that song and those lyrics. Please link me if you know someone who's talked about this. I'm like unironically very obsessed with that song. I have some concerns about it from a poetic standpoint and like an ethical standpoint at certain parts. But the medium at the end of the day it's not a poem, it's a song. So different context. Anyway, I can't look up the lyrics right now, obviously I'm driving. The song's major thread is about the inability of language, I think, to contain or accurately represent the scale of life out here in the country. Its tragedies, what people yearn for, what people have gone through, the devastating intimacies of life out here. And it's hard to kind of capture that in a way that is understandable to anyone who is not a part of these communities. And so since you can't put all of that on a sign, what you have instead is this symbol, more or less, of the Jesus Saves billboard or the posters and cardboard signs and whatnot. Because in the Christian tradition, Christ resides in the places where and with people who are hurting or ostracized or cast out discounted. And so kind of using all of that as a way of communicating certain types of realities and pains that people are going through. I don't know, there's a really compelling connection there for me. So despite my misgivings, I do really enjoy that song. I actually sing it quite frequently in my car. Oh man. So the rain has started again, so I'm gonna have to go because it goes from drizzling to like monsoon zero visibility really quick. But yeah, that's kind of about it actually in terms of why I'm going to Divinity School in a nutshell. Really excited for this next chapter. I would love to figure out a phrase that is not next chapter. If you have any ideas about that, let me know. A new epoch, a new scene. Scene as in C-E-N-E. Yeah, we'll see. Next time I'll tell you guys about my trip that's coming up. Once I get to Connecticut in a couple days, then I'm flying out to Rome and Turkey to do some research. I'll talk to you guys about that next time. Thanks for watching. See you later.